Hey everybody, if we've never met before, my name is Paul Vacheski and welcome to the Real Estate Classrooms YouTube channel where my mission is simple to help you pass your real estate exam the first time. In today's video, we're going to discuss some very important key real estate terms. I like to call them legal names that you have to know for your real estate exam, because if you don't know who is who, you're going to miss a lot of questions on the exam. A couple of things that you as a student need to remember: that in the real estate world, we have two sets of names when we're talking about parties to contracts. And the type of real estate transaction and the type of contract that is being used will determine the legal names of each party. Now, typically we have a street name or a slang name, and then we have the legal name that we have to know. We have to know both of them, because what you're going to find on the real estate exam is a lot of times the testing services will use both, sometimes within the same question. So you might have a question that uses the term landlord, but then a potential answer, they use the term lessor. So you have to be able to identify the street name with that party's legal name. And that's what we're going to discuss here. One other thing you have to be aware of: these legal names end in OR or EE. And the best way to remember which is the OR is the giver, and the EE is receiving. So the grantor is giving title, and the grantee is receiving that title from the grantor. So if you remember that, that'll help you as you are preparing for your real estate exam. So let's actually get to the legal names that I wanted to discuss here in this video. Now, the first set of legal names is the offeror and the offeree. Now, before any real estate contract is signed, no matter what type of contract it is, there is also always an offer. A party makes an offer, and the other party either accepts or rejects. So we have the offeror. Let me give you an example. A purchaser or someone who wants to buy real estate, they make an offer on a house. They offer $100,000. They are giving the offer. They are the offeror. The offeree receives that offer. So in this case, the owner's going to receive that offer. They're going to look at it and they're going to say nope, and they reject it, or they say yep, they accept it, and then their legal names change from offeror to offeree to grantor or grantee, or they counter that offer, and then the offer or offeree flips. So then the seller becomes the offeror and the buyer becomes the offeree, because it is the seller that has said, no, I don't want 100,000, but here's my offer. I want 150,000. So the offer or offeree continues to run. Oh, that's my phone. The offeror and the offeree continue to flip until the contract is rejected or accepted. And remember, once the offer is done, there's no more offer or offeree. Then we go to their legal name based on the type of contract that they were negotiating. The grantor and the grantee. The grantor is the person that is transferring or giving ownership or transferring title to another person, called the grantee. So in a typical sales, we have the grantor, who is the owner. They are going to execute a deed, and they're going to transfer their ownership interest to the buyer, which is the grantee. Grantor is seller, grantee is the buyer. And there are two specific real estate contracts where the legal names of the parties are grantor and grantee, and that is the purchase contract and a deed. Vendor and vendee. When the real estate contract that we're using is a land contract, we still have a buyer-seller. It's just a different type of real estate transaction. So when the contract that is being used is a land contract, the giver's name is the vendor and the receivee's name is the vendee, meaning the owner of the property that is giving the land contract to the buyer is the vendor, and the buyer is the vendee. Mortgagor and mortgagee. This is the one that most students by far have the most trouble with. It seems like it's a little bit backwards, but it's really not. Now, if you live in a state where we use mortgages to secure the property's collateral, then the legal names of the parties to the mortgage is the mortgagor and mortgagee. Now, some states use the deed of trust. I'm going to talk about that in a different slide. But if you live in a state where they are using mortgages and the mortgage is used as collateral for the loan, then the legal names of the parties is mortgagor, which is the borrower, and mortgagee, which is the lender. And a couple of tools that might help you remember this. That is the mortgagor, who is the borrower, they give their monthly payment to the mortgagee, who is the lender. Me personally, the way I remembered it when I was sitting where you are is there are two E's in mortgagee, there are two E's in lender, and that's how I remembered. Assignor and assignee. Now, the type of real estate contract that we are talking about here is an assignment contract. And just briefly, an assignment contract is used to transfer a party's legal interest in a separate contract to transfer that interest to another party. So, for example, we have a purchase agreement between the buyer and the seller. The buyer decides they don't want to buy the house, but their friend does. So they would use a separate assignment contract for the buyer to assign his or her rights to this other person. And then they are removed from the contract, and then the original owner and this end buyer then go to closing. The contract that is used is an assignment contract. And when an assignment contract is used, then the legal names for the parties are the assignor, which is the buyer over here in that other contract. They are the assignor. They are giving their interest in that contract to the third party here, which is called the assignee. They are receiving that interest from the assignor. Let's look at the lessor and the lessee. Now, one thing to remember, the lessor. The lessor is the landlord unless there's a third-party property management contract that has been signed between the property owner and the broker. In that case, then the broker becomes, or the property manager becomes the lessor because they are representing the interest and working on behalf of the landlord. And then the tenant is the lessee. And why is that? Because when that lease agreement is signed, the landlord is transferring the legal right of possession and the legal right of quiet enjoyment, all those leasehold estate rights, they are transferring them to or giving them to the tenant, and the tenant receives them once that lease agreement is signed. Therefore, the owner or the property manager is the lessor, the giver, and the lessee is the tenant because they are receiving those legal interests. And the last one I want to talk about, and I saved it for last intentionally, is the deed of trust. When the deed of trust is being used as collateral for a loan. Remember, we talked about the mortgagor and the mortgagee when the real estate contract is a mortgage that's being used as collateral. Well, in other states, they use the deed of trust. And when a deed of trust is used, then there are three parties. It's really the only one that has three parties. And all three parties have legal names. So the borrower is called the trustor. And the reason is because they are giving their legal right of ownership, their legal ownership or their legal title, and they're actually technically putting it into a trust. And then they are authorizing a trustee, which is a disinterested third party, who now is the custodian of that trust. And they manage that ownership for the lender. And the lender is known as the beneficiary. So the trustor is giving legal title and the trustee is receiving it. Now, this is the only real estate contract where there are three parties instead of two, and it can be very, very confusing to understand. So, I did a video on the difference between a mortgage being used as collateral and the deed of trust that's being used as collateral. And you want to check that out. It's right here. Here's the link. See you all in the next video.